I'm just going to wade right in. I know Mel has given a brief introduction, but she's welcome to join me. I don't think I can let this week go by without discussing this week. I don't think, I mean, I avoid politics and occasionally I let slip something, but this was one of the saddest weeks that I can remember being an adult, in terms of our frictionless society that we live in. Obviously, I'm being ironic. I don't really want to head into the good or bad of Trump. I mean, I think that's self-evident for whoever chooses to look at him from whichever perspective and through whichever prism they'd like to look at him through. But I'd like to introduce a new theme. And it's really the theme of truth. And if anyone has anything they'd like to say to that, as always with these themes, they're totally voluntary. And sometimes I'll just nail it on you and you'll be like, oh my God, I didn't want to talk about that. In which case, just don't talk about it. Just be like, I don't want to talk about it. But truth is a really interesting word. It's not the same as belief, and it's not the same as fact. And it almost requires freedom in order to really enjoy truth, the beauty of truth. You sort of have to be free. And I'm quite saddened by the fact that, and this is not going to be a dirge today. We're going to have fun today. It's not going to be like, oh, it's a really introspective, terrible movie, because we've got Una's birthday to celebrate and all sorts of fun things. But I just want to say, you know, a lot of the people who believed that the election in America, if you're not in America, was fraudulent, believed it. They believed it. They thought that it was. They weren't being malicious. They weren't trying to lie to it themselves. They genuinely believed it. And somehow we have to explore the truth of this situation, so that people can come out from there behind these particular fences and shake each other's hands again. So anyway, that's the theme. And it can go off in any old direction. Doesn't all have to be, you know, all about the terrible things that happen at the Capitol in Washington, DC. But hey, if you want to get into that, feel free. So, where is Jan? Where is Jan? Completely different.
Una. Where is Una?
I read a word on the screen and I was like, where? And that's not exactly what I meant. Where is Una? That's who I wanted to say.
Una, we're going to celebrate your birthday.
Oh, hello.
Hello. Happy birthday, Una. Please, everybody get off their noisy
Happy
boxes.
birthday.
Happy birthday, Una.
Birthday.
Hey.
Happy birthday.
Oh, God.
Birthday.
I'm 49.
Oh, no.
Ideally placed to get the vaccine later than everybody else in the entire world, as far as I can make out. Just perfectly timed. Yeah. So it's the only time I've wished to be 50.
Do 50-year-olds get it sooner in the UK?
Yeah, it's a kind of cut-off point. I think if I was 50 next week, I'd probably get it, you know, within the next few months. But I'm not. I'm 49, so it's going to be like, well, I don't know. They're just kind of rubber stamping any vaccine in Britain, so we're probably all going to be done by the end of March or something. I don't know. Possibly not very effectively. So this time last year, we were heading to Paris to go to an exhibition of Tolkien stuff, because I'm a big kind of Tolkien nut. We stayed in this amazing hotel suite that had this balcony with a hot tub. Yeah, I know, just gonna add it on there. We sat in a hot tub, the three of us, myself, my partner, my little girl. We're drinking champagne, she's not. Watching the Eiffel Tower, just sort of, it's like some kind of memory from a different world, you know?
Yeah.
So, Yeah. So it's kind of incredible. So just after that, I was in LA at a convention as well. So that was my last kind of hurrah, was at the end of February. And then that was it. I've not been into Cambridge City Centre for 10 months. So it's all a bit bonkers. Yeah. So, my mum, who's 90, had her second jab last week. So we're quite pleased about that. So yeah, I've told this story to lots of people. On her 80th birthday, the Icelandic volcano hit, and my brother couldn't get over from New Zealand. 90th birthday cancelled for a pandemic. So I really, really advise you to watch out when she hits 100, because we're going to get serious.
Something terrible is going to happen to all of us.
Asteroid, aliens. It's going to be really, really grim. So April 2030, I'm telling you now, you need to. Mama Mac has got something planned.
This is going to be like when the millennial K2 disaster strike.
It is. Yeah. Or I don't know, she'll turn into a being of light or something. Something incredible.
Oh, that's fantastic. How are you, though? How are you?
Do you know, it's really weird, but since they finally went into lockdown here, I am so much more relaxed. It's sort of thank God, it just feels this little bit safer. People aren't going out. So, it's just a absolute, I won't swear, cluster fnuck here. But I mean, it's a real mess. Cluster bunch. But just such a relief. I just feel so much safer. But as I say, I'm just not going out. I won't for a fortnight.
It's very smart.
Yeah, we're homeschooling again. She's been brilliant. She's the difference between homeschooling a 6-year-old and a 7-year-old is a significant difference. Yeah, so she's been great.
Has she turned a corner during this COVID, in the sense that, I mean, obviously she's always going to be growing up, and she's always going to be absorbing and learning and grabbing every bit of information in the world and just sucking it in. But is there some kind of philosophical shift in her over COVID? Because I remember that around that age, Django started to, and I remember this clearly, to talk in really creatively and really discursively, really interestingly, about things, not just like, that's blue or I'm mad at you.
Absolutely. So she's been stuck in a house with two, 40-odd-year-old adults. It's a quarter of her life she'll have spent under COVID when you think about it. She's going to be nearly 8 when this is over. So that's 2 years. It's incredible, isn't it? But yes, she's had that. They have that little upgrade, don't they? Sort of sometime during their 7th year.
It's different, it's probably different for everybody, depending on the environment. But for Django, it was just like at 7, he just took off, and I could have discussions with him.
So we don't really watch news because it's so bleak. But we were explaining, and we were explaining to her today about the attempted coup. And she was listening. Usually she doesn't listen to a word we say, she's like, yeah, whatever, I'm kind of trying to watch television, shut up. But today she was really kind of, okay, right, this is clearly something I need to be listening to and understanding. But over Christmas, she was writing Deep Space Nine scripts.
Oh, my goodness.
Sitting down at her little laptop, typing, that can't think where she's... There is some Cossack dancing, I'm warning you, it's pretty random.
There is.
She's glommed onto Jadzia Dax, and she loved to move along home with the Alamarine because it's got a little girl in it. She's a riot. It's really good fun. And you think most of the time you're so busy, you're running around, you're trying to get stuff done, and actually spending all this time with my 7-year-old is really, really nice. This would never have happened. I would have just been running around, I would have been working, and I have to stop and teach her. And then you may as well just switch off and just ride with the moment.
That's a wonderful thing. I'm so jealous because I didn't. I mean, I was still working, life was just carried on along its pre-apportioned paths. We brought up the kids as best as we could, but you didn't have to shut everything down and wait a minute, this is all yours now. It's all about
you. He kind of homeschools in the morning, I homeschool in the afternoon, and then we try and fit everything else in around it, which is a bit chaotic, but it's all right.
It's been a merry old week. That
Yeah.
had some pretty disastrous things happen, and I think when the dust settles, there'll be, I don't know, but I'm expecting that the dust will settle at some point, and there'll be some sort of, hopefully not too much recrimination, and a little bit of actually, how do we get through this next bit? Because there's so many people.
Were you watching it unfold in real time? Obviously, I went to bed, and
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
I mean, everybody was, because everybody got a text from someone going, "You have to film the TV right now," and it, oh my goodness, oh. And it was like scenes from a sort of another country, from some war-torn country. But I think everyone's still reeling from the shot that it happened in the United States of America. It's the kind of in a weird, grandiose way, it's the world's parliament. It's like that's the last bastion of this. Is at least it'll never happen there. But my goodness, we reached giddy heights over this week, and it was just terribly sad. That was the overwhelming feeling I had, was just terrible sadness.
I'm trying to be positive. I'm trying to think of it like a lancing of a boil, that it's like all of this has just come out now.
I hope so. I think it will be cathartic. I think it will be a moment of reintroduction. At least I hope we can point to it being the beginning of that time. Because you know me, I've been banging on about unification for ages. That's been one of my bugbears. Yes, I think a few people probably need to go to prison, and then we can just get it behind us.
I hope so. But it just needs to be out there. It can't be allowed.
Absolutely. I mean, either there are consequences for this sort of thing, or there are not.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, we've both parented small children. There's got to be consequences for this.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's a similar sort of thing. So, and then you kind of look at what's happening in Britain, and you think, okay, right, we've got another 3 years of these
enduring this the mini me of in England, Trump's mini me over there. I'd like to ask you, because it'd be kind of interesting to find out what one of the problems is, one of the great hurdles is for us, both sides of the channel, actually all over the world. What is this thing, truth? How can we respect the belief of someone and say, but you're wrong? Because this is the reason we're here, is because we've got to a place where 70 plus, 74 million people in the States, if you want to be exact, believe that this election was fraudulent. And there may be even friends of ours in this room who believe that too, but we have to find a way to go, well, we differ entirely on this. And we've been to court millions of times, and we've really exercised this idea, in the proper channels, do it the proper way, and it has been disproved. And this isn't flat Earth society we're talking about. This isn't trying to convince people the Earth is round. It's much less profound than that. That's the key to the future. If we can find a way to discuss the truth without upsetting each other. What's your angle on that?
Oh God, right. Oh God, I am to some extent a relativist, but I don't know. I think that this is the paradox of tolerance, isn't it? This is what Karl Popper has to say, that you can tolerate everything except the intolerance of others, and an open society just has to live with that paradox. And ultimately, there comes a point where you go. And I think the other thing is, I read a very good piece today, and it rang very true, is that I believe that there are people who are easily led and misguided and delude themselves. But I think a large number of people argue in bad faith. And I've seen this happen. Yeah. So we have a relative who is quite alt-right. And I've seen my other half turn to this person and go, you're an intelligent person, you don't believe this. And you can see this moment of her being kind of caught. And I think a lot of people say this stuff for shock value. I think it comes from a psychological need to hit out at something. And actually, if you call on people and go, I don't think you believe that's true, I think they find themselves caught. Because I think we all know we've all got pretty strong detectors. That's my feeling. That, I tell you what, that's where 25 years of higher education has got me. I think there are very practical things that we can do about depolarizing news sources and not kidding ourselves that free speech is meaningless if it's in bad faith, or you've just got the freedom to spout rubbish. There's an integrity and a kind of self-regulation and moderation that needs to be involved. So
the freedom of speech thing is an interesting one. I mean, it's actually, if they'll forgive me saying so, because I'm not American, it's actually rather misunderstood in America, because the freedom of speech, the First Amendment here, is not freedom of speech to say anything you like. It's the freedom not to be able to say against anything in the eyes of the government. The government cannot imprison you for saying something that that it was never really designed to be. Just say whatever you like to anybody you like all the time. Have fun. And
they've got the freedom to tell you you're a bloody idiot. It's the other thing. But it's not easy to do that. So I don't know. I think ultimately when you're faced with Nazis, you just have to say, actually, no, we're not tolerating that. And it's never paid off. It doesn't pay off to appease or to say, no, we need to give these people a platform. Actually, no, they don't need a platform, because their platform is based on wanting to make you extinct. And that's not on.
I'm much more concerned about the 70 million people. Trump will, and all of that will find its own place, and the system will deal with all of that, I think, just in due course. But the fact that many people are cut adrift right now, or at least there's a potential that they're very vulnerable and can be, because obviously at some point they decided they believed. Or they lapsed into belief. I don't know quite how it went, but I'm concerned for them. So I'm just wondering whether or not Senator Mitt Romney, who's a not very remarkable senator, actually, to be honest, in my opinion. He's perfectly ordinary, but he's been very stand-up-y against Trump, against President. And he said that this 74 million people are owed the truth from their Senate and their Republican from the Congress. And that was kind of one of the coolest things that was said that night, on Wednesday night, because those guys had to get together and elect a president.
Yeah, he's acquitting himself very well, and I think he's quite canny as well in that. I mean, ultimately, I think that the people who voted for Trump, the minute this becomes toxic, they're going to want to drift away from that. Oh, well, I was kind of persuaded in 2016, but it was quite clear to me by the time COVID started that maybe, and then when we got to that, people are just waiting to be persuaded away. And Romney's a very credible candidate for that. I think, but I think his credentials as a sort of candidate are quite positive, and he seems not to be barking, which I think helps. I think he's positioning himself very well. And positioning himself as a kind of moral high ground, which never does any harm. But I do trust him a little as well. Anyway, I'm very positive. What I really hope is that these guys, Biden and Harris, that they don't muck around for this first 100 days. They just get straight in there and do everything that needs to be done to shore this democracy up, because it needs it. It needs it. It needs serious repair, and immediately. So get in there, don't muck around, get it done, and don't, pander to these people, because they won't. They'll seize the inch that you give them. That's my feeling, anyway.
I hope the president. I think the next president will it'll be a very high priority to try and just hold hands across the aisle and try and make friends, because America, obviously, no country is great when it's this divided. It's possible. It's actually a powder keg ready to blow when it's this divided, when someone hacks a computer somewhere and suddenly the whole place goes up because everybody believes the next crazy theory that comes out of our internet. Wednesday is your birthday. I don't know what you're going to do. Do you have a plan? I don't think you can plan much.
I'm going to fly to Paris and I'm going to sit in a hot tub with a glass of champagne. No, I don't know. I will think about what a great time I had last year. I'll think about what we want to do with my 50th, which is to go to Ravenna. And in the meantime, I'll just chill out, and I don't know. I'll watch some Deep Space Nine. That's probably what I'll do, but it'll be good. So thanks everyone. Thanks for the birthday
for
wishes.
letting me just bang on about this, but I just couldn't let it go. It's a bit big of much of a thing.
Me too. Yeah.
But it was lovely talking to you anyway.
Good to talk to you.
You're very welcome.
Okay. Take care, Sid.
You too.
Thanks, Una. Happy birthday.
Thank you, Mel. Thanks, everyone.
I've got to say, someone who's living in the middle of red state Kansas, I caution you on your optimism.
Absolutely. You've done it before. You have cautioned me on my optimism. We've talked about this privately, and you're like, well, not so much.
Can I add something, Mel? This is Vani. Can I add something to what Sid was just saying? The difficult, I agree with what you're saying, Sid, that we should try to find a way to connect with people who we don't agree with on pretty much anything. And it's really hard. And I think more than that, I think I look back and I say, who do I know that's voted for Trump? Who do I know that's really thinks he did good and, everything that I don't believe in? And it's really hard to find that. I think even though we know we're in our bubbles, it's hard to get out of them. I live in New York, and I know many people who voted for Trump, but many of them are work circumstances, and it's not something that you can easily get into. And unfortunately, we're at a stage where I really wish I had the power to speak to someone who disagreed with me, and they didn't feel like I was trying to convince them, that it was just a conversation. And it's really hard. I even dated a guy who believed in Trump, and I was like, how is this possible? How am I reconciling with this, two parts?
Well, I think we have to struggle with that. I think we have to. And until we do struggle with that, if it's always going to be us and them, we're in real trouble, because, boy, we have to give them an opportunity, a way back, or they maybe let them think they're giving us an opportunity, a way back, whatever way it goes. It seems odd to me that because I know a lot of people have a real distrust and a real lack of, an inability to want to repair fences right now, mend walls, build bridges.
Yeah, well, and also, we don't really know a lot of people from the other side that family doesn't count, because family adds another layer of intricacy and difficulty, emotions and all of that. But, you have to know someone long enough that you can talk and disagree and still not hate the person. And I've only had this with a few people. There was a guy I worked with, and literally everything I said, he said, oh, that's something else. And he had a different turn on it. But then I kept citing articles I read and things and then he was citing stuff. And at the end of the day, I still really liked the guy. But this is not the typical, because we get so emotional, and I don't know. And what you're saying is absolutely true. We are at that spot where we can talk, and we know we should talk, but it's one of the things I really want to do. I'm like, I want to meet the people who I disagree with, and I want to talk to them. I don't want to talk to anyone I agree with. This company is not included in that.
Way to look at it. You're in Pune.
Yeah, good memory. Oh my God.
You've got no chance of meeting any Trump supporters in Pune.
Well, no, you don't.
Oh yeah, no, I do know a little bit about modern Indian politics, and
yeah.
They're just not
tribalism and strange things happening everywhere,
I know.
Anyway, I didn't mean. I just when you were talking about that, I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to talk to somebody I don't agree with.
I think anybody who wants to say something about this must feel free to just get off the mic and say something, because I don't know. I certainly don't have a monopoly on the facts here, or the philosophical approach to how to to begin to get this sort. And there are probably people who are living in countries where they know there is a kind of political kind of autocracy which cannot be breached, and what that feels like. That must be very interesting. where truth is defined by someone else all the time. That's like, whoa, that must be annoying. In America, kind of, and in Europe, we're pretty spoiled because we've got this freedom to decide what the truth is for ourselves all the time. And it's been a bit difficult the last few weeks because it feels like that freedom has been yanked out of our hands.
Yeah, so if you've got, if you want to jump in at some point when it feels organic, this is a, should we say, kind of an extraordinary meeting in that we've got something that something that's happened that is affecting a lot of us. So
yeah, you're uncomfortable. We're here to make it a little bit easier.
Yeah, tap into the collective consciousness and maybe find some answers. All right, we're going to talk with Adriana next.
How are you?
I mean, all things considered, like, I'm okay. I'm hanging
Are
in
you
there.
In the States?
Yes, I'm in Pennsylvania.
Gosh, what a week, eh? What a year. Yeah. You know what I was thinking last night? For you and other people who are very young, you have been involved in something that a pandemic which happens centennially, once every 100 years. You have also been involved in the last few days in a storming of the Capitol, which happens once every 200 years. You are in a part of a very remarkable time. It's a really terrible luck that this is all happening in your lifetime.
Yeah, it's pretty surreal.
It is. Most people just go through that maybe they'll catch one pandemic, but they won't catch both of these things. You know, this is a crazy time. How is your family?
I mean, I haven't seen most of my family in a while, just, because of the pandemic. I've just been trying to be responsible and social distance, but
you've done a good job.
Well, actually, I'm kind of estranged from my parents right now. So yeah, that's kind of a sore spot, but my extended family, I'm in touch through social media and text messaging. I mean,
you must be a very good person to talk to about this if you're comfortable talking about it. How does this happen?
I'm hardly an expert on this sort of thing, but I think social media echo chambers play a huge role in this, and it did so with my parents. And I guess just consuming a lot of extremely biased media, and so they are just looking for things that reinforce their particular view. Confirmation bias.
Yeah. And if it's your parents, you can obviously say what you like.
In what way?
Because we can be most honest to our most intimate people. We can actually tell them what we think.
I mean, I've been butting heads with them for years, and nothing I do gets through to them. So at this point, I for my own mental health, I had to step away.
Get the hell out of there! Absolutely, you're absolutely right. Your own mental wellness is way more important than butting heads with, even if it's your parents. What is the painting behind you? It's fascinating and rather beautiful.
This is a piece by a local artist. Unfortunately, I forget their name.
It's really beautiful. It's got sort of all those sort of colors of the night.
I really like sort of like color field and abstract art. Like Jackson Pollock and Mark Rothko and stuff like that. So I saw this and
you're like, this is speaking to me.
Yeah, and actually, this painting belongs to my boyfriend. I've been staying with him. We have similar tastes. And actually, he wants me to tell you that he loves you and is a big fan.
Oh, that's very cool. I'll tell him thank you very much.
He got me into Star Trek.
Oh, that's a sin.
And now I'm much more invested in it than he ever was. So he created a monster.
Yeah, that's really cool. What are you up to? How are you making a living and stuff like that during this time? Because everybody's having a really tough time.
Well, I've been very fortunate in that I have been able to stay employed, but I also do film programming on the side. So both for the indoor theatrical setting and also virtually.
About that. We were talking about film programming. Yeah.
So basically, I'm responsible for sourcing and curating films to screen theatrically and also in a virtual setting.
Are people turning up to the cinema, the movies, to the theater?
When we were briefly open again, we had some people coming in, but usually it was under 10 people for each screening. And we were at, I think, 25% capacity, so we couldn't have a lot of people in there anyway.
Yeah.
But we've been compensating with virtual programming. We've been doing a lot of online panel discussions and movie talks, things like that.
What do you do? What do you sort of watch it together and then discuss after on a link, or do you how does it work?
Well, I mean, it depends on what the event is, but usually, like for a movie talk, for example, members of our cinema committee will choose like a well-known film and they'll give a presentation on it, provide context for the production and dissect themes and things like that. And then there's a Q&A section at the end. And then, for panel discussions, it's usually focused on a specific filmmaker rather than an individual film. Like I moderated a discussion on John Waters last year on his birthday. So
wow,
that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And just stuff like that.
You like Roger Corman as well, that sort of...
Oh, I'm a big fan of like anything campy and schlocky and Russ Meyer.
Yeah. Oh, I made a film last year called Skylines, which is, it's absolutely in that genre. It's absolutely in that.
Oh, believe me, I've seen all three. It's funny because, so I have a friend who does a film podcast and his name is Liam O'Donnell. And he wound up befriending the other Liam O'Donnell who did the Skyline films, because they have so many mutual friends who are like, you guys should talk, you like movies and you have the same name. And so I'm kind of like 1 degree of separation away from your Liam O'Donnell.
That's really cool. Yeah, when I saw it, I was like, I was a bit nervous, and then I watched it and I was like, whoa, this is exactly the kind of movie that used to be made in the 90s and 80s, and he's done a really good job of it. Obviously, it's going to get panned by critics because it isn't high-minded at all, but it is great pop sci-fu.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Film snobbery really annoys me. Like I don't make any distinctions between highbrow and lowbrow. Like, I like a lot of art cinema, but I also like we were just talking. I'm sorry.
Sorry, no, I'm interrupting you because I know that if I don't say this, I'll forget it. Have you watched the movies of a British director called Lindsay Anderson?
No, I don't believe I'm familiar with their work.
His first name is Lindsay and his second name is Anderson. And he was a prolific theatre director, film director in the 70s and probably the tail end of the 60s and the early 80s. And he is probably I would say one of the top 5 British filmmakers, largely forgotten, largely underrated. That gritty realism and then sometimes crazy abstraction. In the same taste you have for art, he does for movies. And he made a few really spectacular films, and I highly recommend you have a look him up and see if you can find them on YouTube or wherever.
I will do that as soon as I'm done here.
Absolutely. There's one called If, and I would start with that. It's called just If.
Wait, is that about the boys' school?
Yes.
Malcolm McDowell. I have seen that. I guess I just didn't recognize the name of the director, but I have seen that movie. And that movie is kind of a tough watch.
It's a tough one.
Very good.
That's probably the most accessible of his films.
Oh, okay. Then I'm super intrigued now.
He made something else called Oh Lucky Man, again with Malcolm. I mean, I've known him since I was a kid. That's why I even know about him, because if I hadn't met him several times in my life, I would probably, like most people, not know he existed. But he's just very special, really exciting, really interesting stuff. And his stuff is still new, even though you watch it many years after he's stopped making them. That's my little tip. I hope if you're a movie buff, that's something really interesting to discuss, because they've got wacky films, really cool stuff.
Yeah, thank you very much for the recommendation. I'm very excited to dig into his filmography now.
Some of the people know I got invited to the Academy this year for the first time, and so I'm just getting tons and tons of films.
Oh yeah, have you been able to watch any yet?
It's so hard to do. It's like, we've started. I can tell you without any hesitation that the taste of metal. I think it's the taste.
Sound of Metal.
Sound of Metal. Yes, exactly.
I just watched that and was blown away. And like it was weird for me to watch because I'm a musician and
we talked about that.
I'm in a relationship with another musician, and we both have played in harsh noise and metal bands. and we both have hearing issues, so it really hit close to home.
Well, we shouldn't give anything away about it, but it's Riz Ahmed is it's a great movie, great cast. So you play what kind of metal? What does that mean?
I played in all kinds of bands over the years, you know.
You are pro, you.
Like, yeah, but I mean, as far as of what metal I play, I don't know. Like, I'm not in any bands right now, but like I was in like kind of like a neo thrash band, like very influenced by, you know, stuff like Anthrax and Metallica.
Did you like White Zombie?
Yeah, I like White Zombie.
There's that one song they did. Oh gosh.
More Human Than Human.
More Human Than Human.
Thunderkiss. Yeah.
That's a pretty great song. I can't say I've listened to another song of theirs, but otherwise I too would have hearing problems.
Well, it has that great slide riff.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. That big noise at the beginning. And I do like a couple of Metallica things. I'm more sort of Foo Fighters, so metal light, you know.
Okay, so you're not into like death metal.
Not really, no. I grew up
power
with
violence.
a bunch of kids who loved stuff like Jethro Tull, you know, old sort of British metal, which they just called heavy metal. No other thing except that. But I don't know anything about it. What would you recommend to people? Because you're the second person. We have a Bostonian who loves punk and I think metal, but you're the second person who's mentioned that. What would you recommend for newbies to get into thrash metal?
Well, I mean, there's what's called the Big Four: Metallica, Anthrax, Megadeth, and Jesus, now I'm blanking on the fourth one.
I don't think you need to say four. I think you've given us plenty.
Slayer.
Slayer. How could you forget Slayer?
Yeah, I think I almost died at a Slayer concert one time. I almost got crushed in the mosh.
That's just awful. And I suppose that's just exhilarating. You know, I
mean, kind of, yeah. I was in high school at the time, and I was right up front, and their drummer threw a drumstick, and it landed at my feet, and without thinking, I reached down to pick it up, but there was a rush, and everybody pushed forward, and I saw my life flash before my eyes. It got hairy there for a second.
You're not kidding. That's probably incredibly difficult. Well, I'm glad you survived it, so that you're here.
Yeah, me too. But as like far as other metal recommendations, there is a Brooklyn metal band called Imperial Triumphant, and they combine metal with elements of jazz and like hot jazz. If you're into Django Reinhardt, I would say check this band out.
You're not kidding. I've listened to Django Reinhardt. Ended up naming a small child after him. So they're called Imperial Pretensions?
Imperial Triumphant.
Imperial Triumphant. And once you say fusion, then I'm all ears.
They'll have songs where they're doing some pretty like traditional like black metal stuff, and then it'll go into like a swing breakdown, and it's just like not what you're expecting in a really.
I love that. I know that Muse is really kind of supergroup pop band now, but their first two albums did that. They totally surprised you. It was like, whoa, where did that come from? Before they got all big soundy. I think Absolution and Showbiz, I think they're called, really fantastic albums. So I'm sorry that your parents and you don't jive. I don't know how. I'm interested in you because not just for this, but I'm interested in the fact that you are kind of a test case of how on earth we get back together again. But you said you've been banging your head against a wall for 4 or 5 years now, and you simply aren't making any headway. I don't know what to say. I'm kind of astonished, to be honest, because of course the one person who I would always allow to say something contrary to me would be my child, and I would give them the moment to make an effort to actually say, well, okay.
Well, I mean, part of the tragedy of my situation is that I was raised by them to be a critical thinker, and I grew up in a household that encouraged debate, and I never got in trouble for challenging my parents' views. Like we were always having a dialogue. We didn't have to agree with each other, but I was able to have a conversation, a back and forth. And it's gotten so terrible that like they don't allow room for that anymore. Like I cannot make a point without immediately being shot down with ad hominem attacks. I mean, it's such a stark contrast to how things used to be. I didn't have any choice, like, because I couldn't have a conversation with them anymore, I had to just walk away.
Yeah. What a sadness. What a kind of tragedy, because it's just polemic, you know. Obviously it goes deeper.
Yeah.
But it's something fundamentally, I suppose, I don't know. I don't want to theorize when it's your parents involved, but it's something that you think there's a way through. You think, because that's what you're going through now. Basically, the whole of America is going to have to go through in the next few years. They're just going to have to find a way. It becomes a very sort of parabolic, and not parabolic, but like a parable. Parabolic. You've got to keep turning the other cheek at some point, and see how do we get there. But I don't expect you to do that with your parents. In fact, I'm a little bit disappointed that they're not doing that for you.
Me too.
Yeah, it's their job, and it will be for the rest of your life, because that's one of those things. But I'm preaching. Thank you for telling us about your family. I think you've inspired. I'm hoping you're inspiring all kinds of conversations in the chat and in Discord, and I'm hoping people get in touch with you and ask you about your experiences, and you get to talk to them about it, because I think that's really kind of really fascinating.
Yeah, well, and thank you for talking with me. You know, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I've said this before, the fact that you have created a space for conversations like these, and just somewhere where people can go to escape a lot of the stress and anxiety of, you know, the past year. Yeah. And, you know, what's going on right now in the world. It's really special, and I really appreciate it. And thank you so much, Mel, for everything that you do as well. And I hope you have a great evening. And now I will let you talk to somebody else now.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adriana. Be sure to check the chat. There's a lot of kindred spirits in there. All right, we are going to go talk with Uli from Germany. You may remember her. She's cute as a button.
Oh, yes. Hi, Uli. It's good to see you again.
Hi.
Sorry to embarrass you.
Yeah, again.
Twice. Why do you come here? How are you?
Good, I think. I just started my new job in September, so no more home office. I have to go to the office every day, but well, the job is okay.
Yeah.
I'm replacing an older lady who's retiring. So far, it's not fun, but it's okay. And I think when I'm alone and I can organize stuff on my own, then it will be okay.
How many people do you work with?
Well, the company is quite big, but the section I'm in, it's about, I think we are 15 people. But most of them are outside, because I think I told you last time it was a kind of waste collection, but we have a recycle facility outside where people just sort through the waste and pick out the good stuff. And I'm responsible for organizing everything, for selling that stuff, and for getting rid of all the other stuff.
That's kind of interesting. So you are basically treasure hunters.
Yeah, kind of. There's not much treasure inside, because in Germany we are the world champions of separating waste. You know, from the beginning we have like 3 or 4 different waste bins. So when they bring it to us, there's not much left. But the European Union says we are supposed to sort through it. And
what do they bring to you?
Well, when old furniture, that kind of stuff you put out. The normal waste, you just everything you cut in your garden stuff, like tree branches and leaves and that kind. And we also have, how do I explain that? We have a kind of machine that makes it in very, very small pieces, and then it gets transported to another factory that is producing paper, and they use it to burn it for their facility processes and stuff.
Wow. That's kind of fascinating, because this is the recycling process, isn't it? I mean,
yes, kind of. So the best parts we take out as metals. That's basically the only stuff you get money for.
So the company survives.
The company will survive because it's like in public service, it's a daughter company of the city, you know.
Yeah.
But we have to sustain ourselves. That's true. We have to get the money in. We won't get any money, but they won't close us down. They can't do that because they need some place where the people who live in the city bring their waste. So.
I mean, it's a different job. It's an interesting new job, at least, and you've got it, which is great. Obviously, you guys in Europe have seen what's happened in America this week. What is the general impression? Is it just ridiculous, or is it
not believable?
Yeah.
But I have to say, it's really weird. When I saw that, I just thought, well, okay, they're storming the Capitol, but okay, it's happening. And after 4 years of Trump, it was not surprising somehow. And that's, I think, what shocked me most. They did something similar in Berlin a couple of weeks ago. So they tried to, but they got stopped. That wasn't that serious, I believe. So, yeah, the world has gone crazy somehow.
The world has gone crazy. I mean, some of these people were wearing shirts that said terrible things on them, you know, about things, and anti-Semitic things. And you just wonder who's associating with that. It's like, why are you comfortable with these people and being freaking hung around? I'm just going to hang around these people because they seem like friendly people. Huh? Yeah. The mind boggles. So what do you think? What does truth mean to you? Because we've talked before, so I can lay a heavy question on you, but it doesn't have to be a heavy answer, because it's a very fascinating thing, isn't it? Because truth can be different to different people.
Yes, it's always a matter of perspective somehow. I mean, I did write actually I think it was my bachelor's thesis about history writing, and how about the one who writes the history always sees a certain part of it, certain window from a certain perspective.
Yeah.
So he can only describe what he sees and what he thinks, or she. So truth is always a matter of perspective. You will never know what really happened.
Yeah.
If you're in the middle of it, even then, if you're like in the middle of that riot they had, the storming people, even then you might not know the truth behind it. You just see a group of people, they say, okay, let's storm whatever, let's break through the fences, and you might not know why. You just get
carried away.
It's quite scary actually, because
yeah. I mean, it's actually reminds me of things from your country, you know, but back in the early half of the 20th century, and where people just got carried away with an idea that just wasn't good. Just off we go, and it just sucks everybody in. I mean, it's a fascinating thing to watch happen in real life, because we argue about it soberly, with a sort of casual air when we talk about, you know, the atrocities of that time. But much more interestingly, the atrocities are easier to digest. They're easier to understand. What was difficult was to see the emergence of that in the 30s of the Weimar Republic, and how that the country divided itself into a nationalism and into a conservatism. And to watch, I mean, I'm sure you learned all about it from much better perspective than I did, and you're at least hearing it in the right language. I'm having to read translations. So it's funny that this sort of behavior is, I'm hoping it doesn't go any further, but you can begin to see how it happens. You begin to see how friends.
That's a scary thing, you know, because actually I think we have seen that in the past, and we should have learned from it, but I don't think we did.
Yeah.
This is even as what's going on in Germany now. We have a right-wing party, which are actually a bunch of Nazis. Sorry to say that, and they're well, kind of there in my state, they're in the parliament. This is, I couldn't believe that. And they say horrible things, and the other parties try to talk against it, but they're they find a lot of people who follow them for some reason.
Do you ever wonder, sorry, keep going.
They're still a minority, but they're quite loud. And that's a problem. You hear them everywhere and you think, these people seem to be everywhere. But I know they aren't, because I know enough people who are still decent people. At the moment, I really don't care who will be the next chancellor. We have an election this year, as long as it's not some guy from this party. Or I hope they will get a really, really low result. Probably won't.
So too. I'm just curious to know how it happens, because one day they're just crazy people on a minority, very loud, and the next day they run the country. And you go, wait a minute, I missed the period where I saw this coming.
There's a theory that comes from themselves. There was a journalist or something who went undercover and taped a talk he had with some of these guys. And they said, well, we have to make sure that Germany is doing bad, because when the country is doing bad, the right wings will rise. You know, when everything is fine, we won't vote for them because we are happy with the government as it is. So back in the 30s, we had a worldwide economy problems, stuff like that. Of course, people were very acceptive of something new happening. They just wanted to change it. And of course, we always have people who vote for them to protest the other parties. That's a stupid thing to do. I mean, if you want to protest the government and vote something, vote the Liberals, vote the Green Party, or vote the retirement party. We have all kinds of little parties going on, but don't vote for the right wing party.
It's amazing to me, because a lot of the people who would vote end up in the mix of this big new wave of nationalism wherever it is in the world. It's all over the world right now. Lots of them are decent people, and yet they rub shoulders with racists. They rub shoulders with people who openly want white supremacy or black supremacy or whatever their agenda is in whatever country, but it's usually not, inclusive. And they just unable to distance themselves at that point. They go, well, I know they're racist, but they gave me $500 this year and I feel pretty good about that. And this is just, how does this work? Where does this, how do we end up with this such a super sophisticated society? And we're doing that. I don't know. I'm obsessing about it because I'm definitely affected about this last few days. But the fact that you are German and live in Germany, you just have a unique perspective because you've been educated about this. And I find that interesting thing about Germans that I know, especially under 60, have been educated about this. How did we go wrong? What could we do to stop it happening in future? And I find that that's a really refreshing, beautiful way of looking at things. I know Germany still has problems and there's problems all over the world, but it's fascinating because you actually were part of a nation whose ancestors got it horribly wrong.
It goes so far as that somehow we don't dare to be national, dare to be proud of our country or something. That a long time that was something you did not say. I'm proud of Germany. I did not say that. That changed a bit over the years in a good way, not in a Nazi way or anything. Just it's nothing wrong to say I'm proud of my country. Yeah. Well, I live in the former eastern part of Germany.
Okay.
I was born in the former GDR. I mean, I was a little kid when the wall came down and everything. And the problems, there are still differences economically and stuff like that between the two parts, which are not two parts anymore, but we still think of it as that. That's a problem. And that won't change not with my generation, not with the next generation, because they still grew up with that somehow. Yeah. That's also part because of right-wing people. They have a big acceptance here in the eastern part of Germany, because we have the highest unemployment rate and, you know, people moving away. We have a lot of old people living here because everyone who's younger and doesn't find a job just moves west.
Yeah, I was in, a lot of people don't know this, but I was in Berlin, and I didn't realize that Berlin was like an island in east of Western Germany, in East Germany, surrounded almost all the way around by East Germany. And you can walk around Berlin and you can see the line, they leave the line where the wall was. It was quite powerful, quite astonishing feeling that Germany has had so much happen to it. It's just such a complicated country.
Sadly, you still see the line. If you take a train through Berlin, you can sadly still tell where East Berlin ends and West Berlin starts. You see it at the state the houses are in and stuff like that. Yeah. And that's part of the problem. We are united, but we're still talking of the old federal states and the new federal states. And as long as that doesn't vanish inside our heads, it won't change.
Well, I think you have lessons to teach the world about how you, and I'm also amazed about with South Africa. I think they have their problems, they struggle, but they have found ways to overcome histories that are unpleasant and problematic, and to move forward. And I think Germany is a wonderful example of that. I don't think I'm being over idealistic. I know it could change any minute, but there's a population who've been educated in a certain kind of tolerance, a certain kind of humility about history.
That's the right word. Humility about history. Yeah, that's great.
Boy, oh boy. Well, I think your job's wonderful. I think it's doing a terrific. I'd like to know a bit more about it, because I should have spent time talking about it instead of going off on a tangent about nationalism. But I'm curious about just how, because in the States I don't know about England, because I never really understood where my recycling went. But I'm not really sure where the recycling goes in the States. I get a feeling that they all take it to the same place. But I'm glad to hear that in Germany they actually painstakingly pick through it all, separating everything, making sure it all goes to the right thing. But it has been lovely talking to you, Uli. Come back. I'm sorry if I just took over the conversation.
No, it's fine.
I don't think we could let this week go by without just mentioning it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Uli. All right.
Thanks,
thank you, everybody. Here's to a more peaceful weekend.
Good night.
Thanks for indulging me, guys. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
See you Tuesday.
Bye, everyone.
Good night. Take care.